What kind of photos can I take in Washington, D.C. with 150 to 600 millimeter focal length? As some of you know, I bought the Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter contemporary lens back in 2020. And honestly, I've been using this mostly for wildlife photography, as many people do who buy this lens. But I thought, let me do something different and go explore the city with this lens, just to make things a little more interesting. Normally I use wider angle lenses in the city, and if I want closer shots, I'll usually pull out my Canon 70 to 200. So using a 600 millimeter focal length or even 150 millimeter focal length creates a different perspective than what I normally shoot. As you can imagine, using a lens like this really allows me to narrow in on a lot of details in the city. So if you've ever been to the National Mall in Washington, D.C., you know that the monuments and the museums, they're really spread out. At the center of the National Mall is the Washington Monument, and from there you can see all the way to the Lincoln Memorial and to the U.S. Capitol building on the other end. It's a great place to get a feel for the size of the National Mall. Anyway, I decided to head over there to, the center of the mall to capture some photos with my Sigma lens. So here's a little bit of what I captured. Walking towards the National Mall, I took a few quick photos of the surrounding buildings in the distance. I love the perspectives I was able to capture at the 600 millimeter focal length. I particularly like this photo of the Museum of Natural History peeking out in the distance, as well as this photo of two individuals walking in the foreground. I also like how I was able to capture photos like this of people walking in the foreground with the U.S. Capitol building rising up behind them. The Capitol is actually 1.4 miles away from the Washington Monument, which is where those people are walking, but the 600 millimeter focal length creates this awesome perspective. Does it look like it's 1.5 miles away? Because of the focal length and narrow field of view, a telephoto lens like this can make near and far away objects seem closer together and closer in size than they actually appear in real life. So you can definitely have fun with a lens like this in an urban setting. Again, here are more photos of people walking around with the U.S. Capitol building in the background. They're actually pretty far away from the Capitol, but the perspective compression makes it look like they are super close. Speaking of people, as you can imagine, a 150 to 600 millimeter focal length is great for photographing people in the distance, especially if you don't want them to notice you. But for whatever reason though, people always seem to notice what I'm doing, even at 600 millimeters. I guess I am more obvious than I think I am. Anyway, here's a couple more photos, a few of which I took on a different day. The Washington Monument is impossible to capture in its entirety when you're up close and you're using 150 to 600 millimeter focal length. At 600 millimeters, this is how it looked from where I was standing. Not very interesting or recognizable whatsoever. However, from a bit of a distance, I was able to take some nice photos of the American flags surrounding the Washington Monument, both at 150 millimeters and at 600 millimeters. I definitely prefer these photos at the 150 millimeter focal length since I see a little bit more of the surroundings and the flags by themselves are just a little bit boring. Of course, walking around the city, I came across some fascinating local wildlife and I just couldn't help myself. I said I wasn't photographing wildlife, but DC is home to lots of sparrows and squirrels and they're definitely not a rare sight. But of course, this lens can capture them perfectly in their natural urban habitat. But honestly, you don't need a telephoto lens to photograph squirrels and sparrows in the city, because both of them are typically used to humans, and all you really need is a handful of peanuts and you can just whip out that wide-angle lens or even your phone and get an awesome shot. Anyway, some of the photos and most of the video clips that I captured with this lens will be uploaded to Pond 5, and they're actually sponsoring today's video. So here's just a short message about them. This video is sponsored by Pond 5, a stock media platform that's home to millions of stock video clips, music tracks, sound effects, After Effects templates, 3D models, and images. In fact, it is the largest video-first content marketplace in the world, with 30 million stock video clips to choose from, many of which can't be found anywhere else. The website is super easy to use with advanced filters that allow you to find exactly what you need. Pond5's mission is to create world-class storytellers. So to help you tell your story, I'm excited to offer you a 20% discount on your first purchase from Pond5 with the link in my description below. They have also launched their new Refer and Earn program, which I am part of. Anyone can join and start referring. Buyers you refer will receive 20% off their first order, and you'll earn 20% of that first purchase. Plus, you'll get 5% of any purchase that user makes in a whole year. The incentives just get better if you're a contributing artist, so definitely check out the Sell Your Media page to see what being a Pond5 contributor is all about. Okay, so back to my thoughts about the Sigma lens. If you're in DC and you don't want to walk the entire length of the National Mall, which I recommend by the way, but if you don't want to do it, a telephoto lens like this is actually perfect because you can photograph so many of the monuments from far away without walking up to them. Here's the Lincoln as seen from the Washington Monument, and the White House, which has been fenced off on several occasions in recent years, but can always be seen at a distance from the National Mall, regardless of whether or not there's a fence around it. And here's a view of the monuments at 600 millimeters, as seen from across the river in Virginia. This photo was taken about 1 mile away from the Lincoln Memorial as the crow flies. After taking some photos and while walking back to my car at the end of the afternoon, I noticed the colors looking particularly nice at the Jefferson Memorial. So I put my camera on a tripod and I created a short time lapse using the 150 millimeter focal length. I could have zoomed in more and used that 600 millimeter focal length, but I wanted to capture more of the clouds moving in the sky. Anyway, as I said before, I don't usually take the Sigma with me to Washington, DC too much, just because I use it more for wildlife photography and it's also pretty heavy. But it was fun to use it in this context, and I might be doing this a little bit more often. This lens is great in a place like the National Mall, where the attractions are very spaced out and you can very easily photograph buildings that are a mile or two away. But if you're very close to your subjects, then you will probably want to use a wider lens. Anyway, there's a link to this Sigma lens in my description below if you want to read more about it. But, you know, everything I did can also be done with any kind of telephoto lens that has this kind of range or focal length. I've been using this lens for a while now and I still have a lot of fun with it. So let me know, do you use a telephoto lens with a similar focal length? And what is your favorite way to use it, aside from wildlife photography? So that's it for today. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you are new here, and I'll see you in the next video.